It's the 100th episode of Star Trek Voyager. What a wonderful opportunity to stop and reflect on all the classic episodes and memorable moments. This is a review of the Star Trek Voyager episode Timeless. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to find out about the possible future that a member of the Voyager crew found so unacceptable that they used time travel to change it, no, not that one, the one before that, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. How do you make a high-concept milestone event episode without shining spotlights on your show's most serious fundamental flaws? If you're the producers of Star Trek Voyager, you don't. We open on a snow and ice-covered landscape. Two figures beam in, all bundled up. They go on a bit of a hike until they find what they're looking for. They wipe some snow away from the ice, and we cut to an aerial shot revealing that just beneath the ice is the Starship Voyager. Dun dun dun! Much of what I'm about to say about this episode will not be positive, but I just want to emphasize this is a fantastic opening. Okay, so here's the situation. It's 15 years in the future. Well, further into the future. The whole show is in the future. 15 years further into the future than the time in which the series typically takes place. And Chakotay and Harry Kim, the two figures who beamed in at the beginning there, have returned to the crash site of the Starship Voyager on a very important mission. Once aboard the frozen ship, they split up, Harry going to sickbay to reactivate the holographic doctor, and Chakotay heading to the bridge. Upon entering the bridge, Chakotay finds himself surrounded by more frozen corpses than you'd find on a documentary about climbing Mount Everest. Is that Green Boots? Nope, it's Captain Janeway. Chakotay pauses over another body. Sleeping Beauty? Nope, 7 of 9. She seems important. Chakotay contacts another member of his team, Tessa, orbiting the planet in the Delta Flyer, and says, "I found her. Beam her into the lab." Meanwhile, Harry gets to sickbay and turns the doctor on, and the doctor is understandably a little confused about what's going on. He demands an explanation. Chakotay walks in and says, "I'll give you one. It's November sweeps and our 100th show, so we're doing a big stunt episode." Actually, what he says is, "We're here to change history." From there, we shift back to 15 years ago, the show's typical present day, to a ceremony in engineering celebrating the completion of their brand new state-of-the-art revolutionary propulsion system, which they've somehow managed to build in their spare time completely off-screen, the quantum slipstream drive. It's got 2 sci-fi buzzwords in the name. It must be fast. Everybody seems really proud of it, and Captain Janeway is so confident that it's going to work that she announces to the crew that when they bring the drive online and make their first flight with it tomorrow, it will carry them all the way home. Yay! Not everyone is convinced, though. Tom Paris is off to the side running some computer simulations, and he tells Harry that he's worried if they try to fly using this quantum slipstream drive, it could lead to a disaster. The two of them go to the holodeck and run a bunch more simulations, and it seems like Tom is right. The drive doesn't work. If they try to use it, Voyager will be destroyed. Tom and Harry break the news to the rest of the crew, and everyone's pretty disappointed. But Harry has a possible solution. If he pilots the Delta Flyer out in front of Voyager as it enters the slipstream, he can encounter any dangerous bumps in the road first and send Voyager the necessary corrections so they can safely navigate through the slipstream and make it home. Janeway tells Harry to put together a flight plan, and she'll make a final decision whether or not to proceed. The clock is ticking, because the technobabble crystals they used to make their quantum slipstream drive are rapidly decaying, so if they don't use it soon, they'll never be able to. That night, Janeway invites Chakotay over for dinner, and she tells him she's decided to go ahead with Harry's plan. And Chakotay and Harry will pilot the Delta Flyer and lead Voyager through the slipstream. Chakotay is skeptical. He tells Janeway, if you showed our data to any Starfleet engineer, they'd say we were crazy to even try this. Janeway counters with, sure, but it's our only chance to do this particular crazy thing. How can you not do a crazy thing if it's your only chance to do it? Chakotay is like, you've got a point, can't argue with that. Meanwhile, in the future, Harry and Chakotay are catching the Doctor up on what the deal is. It's 15 years since Voyager's quantum slipstream flight. During the flight, everything went tits up. Voyager was thrown out of the slipstream and crashed on that ice planet, killing everyone aboard, while Harry and Chakotay aboard the Delta Flyer were able to remain in the slipstream long enough to make it back to the Alpha Quadrant. Harry blames himself for the crash, having realized that he miscalculated and sent Voyager the wrong corrections during the flight. Fortunately, they've managed to get their hands on a temporal transmitter scavenged from the wreck of a Borg cube. They can use the transmitter to send a message to Seven of Nine in the past, feeding her the correct calculations to keep Voyager in the slipstream and get it home. That's where the Doctor comes in. They need him to crack open the skull of Seven of Nine's frozen corpse and yank out her Borg brain so they can figure out the frequency they need to send their message on, and also determine her exact time of death so they know exactly when to send their message. Oh, also, Harry and Chakotay resigned from Starfleet, and they stole that Borg temporal transmitter, and they also stole the Delta Flyer, so they're fugitives, and Starfleet is hunting for them, which is understandable, since if their plan succeeds, it will radically rewrite the previous 15 years of history. Tessa walks in and says, "Hey, there's a Federation ship in the area looking for us. Probably has something to do with all those crimes we did." Tessa introduces herself to the Doctor, and the Doctor's like, "So how'd you get dragged into this?" And Harry says, "She's fucking Chakotay. She's Chakotay's girlfriend, and they fuck on the regular and the irregular, if you know what I'm saying." Chakotay and Tessa go back to Voyager to retrieve some sensor logs they need for their plan to work, and Chakotay seems depressed. Tessa says, "You okay?" And Chakotay says, "Yeah, I don't know, something about being surrounded by the frozen dead bodies of all my friends. It's got me feeling a little mopey. It's weird." Then Chakotay addresses the elephant in the room, reminding Tessa that if their mission succeeds, the previous 15 years that they remember won't have happened, and the two of them probably won't even know each other. Tessa says, "Yeah, but your heart has always been here, on Voyager, and your all-consuming preoccupation with this ship has made you kind of a shitty boyfriend, so I'm happy to help you get back here, where you'd so obviously prefer to be." Chakotay's like, "I love you too." On the Delta Flyer, Harry is recording a cryptic message to somebody when the Doctor calls him over to help examining the chunk of Seven's Borg brain the Doctor has claw-hammered out of her skull. While the Doctor works on the hunk of brain, Harry fills in a bit more of what's happened these last 15 years. Driven by survivor's guilt, Harry has searched for Voyager all this time, going so far as to quit Starfleet when they called off the search. The Doctor says, "Are you sure you want to try and rewrite history like this? Even if you succeed, the timeline you get instead might be even worse than this one. At least you and Chakotay survived." Harry says, "This timeline only exists because I failed. If this mission succeeds, I erase that failure and my guilt, and that's the most important thing. And saving the lives of everyone on Voyager. That too. That's way up there." Uh-oh, they've got company. That Federation ship Tessa warned about earlier, it's here. It's the Starship Challenger, and hey, the captain is Geordi LaForge. Small fucking universe, right? Geordi's like, "Hey, we know about your plan to change history so that you like it better, and while I'm sympathetic, I've got orders to stop you, so turn yourselves in now, or you will regret it, and you don't have to take what I say at face value." We begin cutting back and forth between Voyager's doomed quantum slipstream flight and the Delta Flyer in the future, with Chakotay and Tessa trying to evade the Challenger, while Harry and the Doctor fiddle with Seven's brain to get the last bits of information they need to send the message. The Doctor finds the data they need, Harry sends the message, and back in the past we watch as Seven receives the transmission directly to her brain, enters the corrections, and it doesn't work. Voyager still crashes into the ice planet. Whoops. Nice going, Harry. Now you've killed everyone twice. No time to wallow in self-pity. Well, okay, maybe a little bit of time for that. The Delta Flyer is still under attack by the Challenger. In trying to get away, Chakotay and Tessa have damaged the Flyer's warp core. They only have a few minutes before they go kablooey. Harry rushes to check his math, struggling to find where he went wrong, why the message he sent to Seven didn't work. With time running out, the Doctor proposes an alternative. If Harry can't figure out the corrections needed to keep Voyager in the slipstream, then he should send another set of corrections that will knock Voyager out of the slipstream, but safely. That way, history will still be changed. The crew won't make it back home, but they'll survive. So that's what Harry does. He needs to deactivate the Doctor and use Doc's mobile holographic emitter for a power source, but he does it. He manages to send a final set of corrections to Voyager in the past, just as the Delta Flyer explodes around him. On the bridge of Voyager during the slipstream flight, Seven receives the corrections, enters them into the computer, and Voyager and the Delta Flyer drop harmlessly out of the slipstream and back into normal space. Even though they didn't make it all the way home, Janeway considers their aborted quantum slipstream flight a success, since it did get them 10 years closer to the Alpha Quadrant. Janeway's decided not to press her luck, however, and she's having the quantum slipstream drive dismantled until they can work out more of the kinks. Harry is in the mess hall obsessing over his calculations, trying to figure out why it didn't work, when Janeway pays him a visit with the answer in the form of a message from the future. From Harry himself. The message was included in the transmission Seven received in her Borg brain. Harry says to Janeway, "Okay, hang on. In the future, I sent my past self a message to change the future, but if the future changed, I wouldn't have needed to send the message, so how can I have received a message from myself in a future that never existed?" Janeway's like, "Just shut up and watch the video," and she leaves. The video is the cryptic message we caught the tail end of future Harry recording earlier. He basically says, "Hey, I fucked up and got everybody killed, but if you're seeing this, it means I was able to use time travel to fix it. Good job, me. You're welcome, sucker. Oh, happy 100th episode." The end. So, my feelings about this episode are not entirely positive, but they're not entirely negative either. And my positive and negative feelings about the episode sort out fairly neatly into separate categories. For example, most of my problems with the episode pertain to how it relates to the rest of the series, while most of the things I like about the episode are related to its execution. When I focus my attention solely on that execution, I find a similar breakdown. The bits of the episode I mostly like are in the scenes set 15 years in the future. The bits I don't like are the scenes set in the present. Here's what I like about the episode. It gets off to a great start. It gets right down to business. It doesn't get bogged down with exposition right away. We know Voyager is under the ice. We know Harry and Chakotay are here in the aftermath of some kind of catastrophe. We don't know what, we don't know how, we don't know when. We find all of that out as we go along, as we follow Harry and Chakotay on their way through the ship, and ultimately as they explain things to the reactivated Doctor, which is a device that makes the expository dialogue that we do eventually get make sense in that context, because, of course, the Doctor would want to know what's going on. The plan that Chakotay and Harry have come up with to prevent the crash and rewrite history is complicated and preposterous, but they manage to explain it in a way that I'm able to follow. I also appreciate how that plan involves some truly macabre elements, like requiring the Doctor to saw the top of Seven's head off and yank out a chunk of her brain, leading to this truly demented shot, and I mean that as a compliment, of the Doctor casually handling one of Seven's Borg components, which includes one of her eyes. The future set portions of the plot move quickly, the goals are clear, the obstacles are well defined, and the character motivations are simple and easy to understand. Chakotay and Harry, but especially Harry, have spent 15 years living with the guilt of being the only survivors of Voyager, and since they live in a Star Trek show where it's possible for them to do something about it, they're gonna do something about it. Starfleet, on the other hand, not wanting to allow them to erase 15 years of history, is determined to stop them. Nowadays, Geordi's gratuitous cameo would probably annoy me, but in this case, I don't mind it so much. For one thing, it makes sense logistically, since LeVar Burton also directed this episode. I mean, he was right there. He only pops up briefly on the view screen to talk to Chakotay. Nobody gushes or fanboys at the sight of him. The producers couldn't resist making him the captain of an Enterprise D lookalike, but at least it's not actually the Enterprise. It could have been a lot worse. Once we get to the portion of the episode where we're cross-cutting between the present and the future, there are some really, really nice transitions. I love the cut from Janeway on the bridge in the present, giving the order to follow the Delta Flyer into the slipstream, to an exterior shot of the Delta Flyer in the future being followed not by Voyager, but by the Challenger. Also, the paralleling of Voyager's perilous flight through the slipstream with the future Delta Flyer's attempt to evade the Challenger does an excellent job at ramping up the tension at that crucial point in the episode. I love that Harry's first attempt at preventing the crash fails. He sends his calculations into the past, Seven receives them and implements them. Everything goes just like Harry and Chakotay have planned for years. And it doesn't work. Harry fails. Again. And he has a little bit of a meltdown. Understandably so, though I wouldn't call it Garrett Wang's finest moment as an actor, until the Doctor steps in and convinces Harry to compromise. Maybe preventing the crash and getting Voyager all the way home 15 years ago isn't possible. Maybe he can't fix everything. But he still has an opportunity to make a change for the better. And he does. Harry ultimately succeeds and saves his friends by not allowing the perfect to be the enemy of the good. The set design and special effects really come through for this episode. Future Voyager's dark, frozen interiors are very effective, and the scene of Chakotay on the bridge, stepping around the corpses of his crewmates, is genuinely grim in a way Star Trek produced in this era rarely ever was. And Voyager's crash into the ice planet is fantastic. It looks so much better than the crash of the Enterprise in Star Trek Generations. No comparison. Great job. There's a lot about this episode that works. And, to be fair to the people who made it, including its aforementioned director, LeVar Burton, and its writers, Brannon Braga and Joe Menosky, working from a story by Braga and Menosky with Rick Berman, much of what does not work about it is due to factors that exist beyond this one episode. If you watch me review enough Star Trek Voyager episodes, the thing you'll hear me complaining about most frequently is how the show fails to live up to the potential of its premise. The thing you'll hear me complaining about second most frequently is how almost nothing that happens to these characters seems to affect them or make any lasting difference in their lives. Timeless suffers as a result of both of these issues. To begin with, we learn that the crew of Voyager has somehow managed to design and install a quantum slipstream drive capable, in theory anyway, of flying them all the way home in a matter of minutes. This feels like a pretty big deal, like a big enough deal that it shouldn't have happened completely off-screen without ever having been mentioned once before we find out about it. This isn't the first time we've ever heard of the existence of quantum slipstream technology in the series. Our heroes encountered such a device in an episode from the previous season, but it still feels like a massive cheat for them to not only build a device capable of getting them home after all those years spent wandering in the wilderness, but to have already done it when the episode starts. The thing is, for me, the problem with the quantum slipstream drive goes even deeper than that. Yes, it would have been better and more effective storytelling if we'd known that they were working on the slipstream drive, if that had been established as an ongoing thing, something happening in the background, occasionally mentioned for at least a few episodes leading up to this. But it feels wrong that they do it at all. The show is about a single starship cut off from all institutional support in unfamiliar territory, so far from home they might not ever make it back. Why are they able to just up and build a new engine for their spaceship capable of getting them home? The fact that they're so far from home is either important or it's not. It's either a near insurmountable obstacle that defines the show, or it's not. As far as the events of the series not affecting the characters, that's not a problem for this episode so much, but it does highlight how much of a problem that is for Voyager on the whole. I think one of the reasons the future set portions of the episode work as well for me as they do is that with these versions of Chakotay and Harry, especially Harry, we finally get to see Voyager characters who actually seem like they've lived through the events of the show. Harry's brooding, damaged future self comes across as a little forced and over the top at times, but mostly he plays as a guy haunted by regret, worn down by the burden of guilt he's been carrying. We get something similar with Chakotay, but it's not as effective because Chakotay's regrets feel more closely tied to individuals among the Voyager crew, whereas Harry's guilt is usually expressed in broader terms. I let everybody down and such. When Chakotay sits on the frozen bridge and says to Tessa, "The last time I was here, they were all alive," it works, but I can't help but feel that it would have worked better if I actually believed Chakotay really cared about his crewmates. I believe that Chakotay is supposed to care about his crewmates. I believe that Chakotay is supposed to care about Captain Janeway, that the two of them are supposed to have developed a close, trusted friendship at this point in the series. But when I watch their scene together in Janeway's quarters, where she informs him that she's going ahead with the slipstream flight and putting him and Harry in the Delta Flyer, I feel like I'm being told that the two of them are close, instead of having been shown that they are over the course of the series. While I'm talking about Chakotay, what's the deal with Tessa? Why is she here? I know why she says she's here. She loves Chakotay and she wants to help him do this thing that's really important to him, but her character has no arc, no meaningful payoff, and she's not necessary to the plot. She seems to exist so that Chakotay has a reason to be conflicted about changing history. If he succeeds in preventing the destruction of Voyager, his current life with Tessa will never have happened. But that never actually goes anywhere. Chakotay and Tessa talk about it once, and then it never comes up again. Chakotay's second thoughts about their mission never come into play in any meaningful way. His attachment to Tessa never threatens to make him change his mind. There's no conflict between Chakotay and Harry because of it. We do get a quick shot of Chakotay and Tessa holding hands right before the end, which is nice. At least they're trying, I guess. But Tessa still winds up feeling like an extra character. Though I think the most damning thing about this episode, at least as far as the series as a whole goes, might be the fact that Chakotay and Harry feel like they were randomly selected to be the main characters here. It's nice to see them get some time and some development, temporary though it may be, but there's nothing about this story that necessitates that it be Chakotay and Harry. It could just as easily have been Chakotay and B'Elanna, or Tom and Harry, or Neelix and Tom, or any other two characters whose names had been drawn from a hat. It doesn't really matter who the heroes of this episode are, because on Voyager, it doesn't really matter who anyone is. Timeless is one of several episodes of Voyager that feels like it was produced by people who had gotten bored making this show. It represents a big swing in a lot of ways, a time jump, an alternate future where most of the cast is dead and the survivors have become fugitives, a mission that involves the heroes rewriting history as a way of dealing with their own personal shit. Such a big swing that it's almost like Berman and Braga decided to mark 100 episodes of the show by making an episode of another show altogether. Like Braga turned to Berman one day and said, "You know, we've got the 100th episode of Voyager coming up. What do you want to do with that?" And Berman just kind of sighed and said, "Shit, I don't know. Let's just skip them ahead 15 years and figure something out from there." In a way, Timeless is the perfect 100th episode for Star Trek Voyager. Ambitious, boldly conceived, somewhat well executed, but ultimately an episode that isn't bad, but could have been great if only it had been part of a better show. How can you have a better encapsulation of Voyager than that? Those are my thoughts on Timeless. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal, or Venmo. Links are in the description. Join me next time as we continue this batch of reviews of episodes about alternate timelines with yet another episode of Star Trek Voyager, also from Season 5. It's an episode called Relativity. That's next week. See you then. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.